He has also acted in several Bollywood movies. Suhel is a regular guest lecturer at various IEMs and IITs across the country. It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome Suhel Seth to address us and enlighten us in the ways to successfully brand and market our association, LCI. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and a special word of thanks to my friend AP Singh, who convinced me to come here. I very rarely attend afternoon sessions, especially when you have about 2,000 to 3,000 people, because you don't want to upstage India's Prime Minister in anything we do, lest we be in trouble. I think from the little that I've known of Lions, and one has, because Lions as an organization has an uncanny and rightful ability to talk in very compassionate terms about the work it does. But if you look around the world today, Lions is not the only one, and brands are all about winning trust, about creating a repository of goodwill and ensuring that people only look at you more than they would look at others. So let me tell you a little bit of what I think Lions should do, what perhaps you might want to consider, but most importantly, draw the global landscape for you first. Giving back is no longer an option. Giving back is not a choice that people need to make. You used to make that choice when you could hide behind the cover of either tax credits or talk about a society which needs to evolve. Increasingly, the world is seeing divisiveness. And the worst kind of divisiveness is one which is based on economic inequality. Economic inequality hasn't been caused only by you and me. It's been caused by communities, by societies, by irresponsible politicians who we irresponsibly elect many a time. It's been caused by societies which undergo both political, historical anarchy. So how do societies react to this giving back? The interesting bit is that you're sitting in a country where giving back was discussed 3,800 years ago by a chap called Manu, when in Manu Smriti, he talked about daan, which means give. Giving back at that time was very important for the Hindu way of life. I refuse to call Hinduism a religion because it isn't. Daan was important because you needed to bind a community without making the community worry about their next meal, or about shelter, or about home, or about dignity, or about livelihood. Religion, to my mind, and I'm agnostic, but I completely support people who worship, and yesterday you had one God man, today you will have another spiritual leader. To each their own, but when religion was formed, religion also used very succinctly and very well, and in fact, one of the religions in India, Sikhism, on a daily basis practices giving back. It practices what they call the community kitchen. You heard this morning from the founder operators of Akshay Patra. The US then began giving back and actually brought marketing glitz, as the United States often does, to everything it does, to giving back. But at that time, the Rockefellers were giving back not because they wanted a community to evolve. They were giving back to change their brand descriptor from being robber barons to people who were actually people with a golden heart. India got independence in 1947. For a large part, post-independence, we were a socialist economy. what was very, very difficult for Indians to achieve was the fact that there should be no legacy. And Indians, as Indians will tell you, and those of you who are Indians know, there is a huge propensity amongst Indians to preserve things for their future generations. So, it's not about just one advertisement for Patek Philippe. It's almost like everything they want to preserve, hand down from generation to generation, including memorabilia, shawls, rings, even pressure cookers are handed down from one generation to the other in India. But those times have also changed. About 5 years ago, the Union Government of India took a decision which forced and has mandated corporate India, companies in India, to give away 2% towards community building, towards corporate social responsibility. At that time, mine was the only dissenting voice against it publicly. Because there were companies like the Tatas, the House of Tata for years has built its entire business around philanthropy. And the Tata started philanthropy the day they started the company, which is almost about 149 years ago. They turn 150 next year. And the Tata's business model is fueled by the desire to give back to the community. The shareholding of the holding company vests with the trusts. So 66% of the holding company of the House of Tata, which is India's biggest conglomerate, is held by Tata Trusts, whose sole purpose is to give back. So do we really need lessons from the Gates and the Buffetts of the world? The reason we accept lessons from the Gates and the Buffetts of the world is because we didn't induce marketing into this. And marketing is not a putrid word. Marketing is not about commercializing goodness. Marketing is about spreading the awareness that good is very good, that good becomes a great buffer against the vagaries of business uncertainty, that goodness is ultimately a celebration of the ability of man to think beyond his or her realm and to look at a larger world with a greater purpose of equanimity and involvement, of grace and elegance, of compassion and affection. That is what goodness is about. So Lions is not in the business of service. You're in the business of goodness. You are celebrating the good that exists within you. You're allowing people to be touched by that goodness. And at times you use commerce, at times you use volunteerism, at times you use a larger purpose to benefit this mass of humanity that you touch in over 100 countries. Why is giving back today even more critical? I've often said in my public lectures, both live and on television, every society has the rich and the poor. Every society has the abled and the specially abled. Every society has distinctiveness in intellect and the capacity to create. The worst society is not the one which has poverty. The worst society is the one which has a poverty of opportunities. It's very important for societies to look at what I've just said. The impoverishment of opportunity is the worst thing a society can be afflicted with. It is cancerous, it prevents development, it stymies growth, and it completely negates the idea of human evolution. And when I say the poverty of opportunity, I'm referring to three things. We have to provide societies, irrespective of who resides within them, the opportunity to educate themselves. We need for them to have the opportunity for healthcare. And we need for them to have the opportunity for a dignified living. And by dignified living, I don't mean living which is comfortable. I mean living which respects the dignity of human beings, or what they do, or what their larger purpose is, or what they've committed to doing. The problem today is that the Lions and the Rotaries and all these people are all seen as one large body with different agendas. So for some, you'll be the Rolls-Royce of philanthropy. For others, you might just be the Ford. But that's not important. What is important is, should all organizations be doing everything, or should organizations sit down and say, the world has 3 or 4 very large pressing problems. And that's why I think where the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation have scored is, they've used and determined that healthcare, but the eradication of disease within the spectrum of healthcare will be their sole purpose and their sole objective. At the Tata Trusts, and I have the privilege of advising Mr. Tata. In fact, I spent the whole of Sunday yesterday with him in Bombay. We've decided we'll be in 4 areas. And our 4 areas are healthcare, education, sanitation, and digitization. And when I say digitization, I'm not saying we'll create a mass of, computer literate people. But we will allow digital India to actually unfold for ease of business, for transparency, for mobility, where you can use mobile telephony and mobile facilities to actually help farmers, to help fishermen, to help the poorest of the poor. Societies will only change if we are cognizant that the poorest of the poor must first be able to see change. The tragedy is the glimmer of hope stares at us like a rainbow, but only at us. We then believe we are the messiahs of change, we're the disseminators of good. But no, that glimmer of hope needs to be seen in the poorest of the poor. I've often used this phrase for younger people. I mean, you guys are also young, but not obviously as young as school children, I hope. And I've often said that the real change in any society and real change in humanity will be when the person least expecting change to touch him is touched by the change that you give him. And most of us, and especially the poorest of the poor, have no expectations except for the very basics, the very fundamentals of life. It is not the business of governments alone to provide that. It is also the business of communities. It's your business and my business to participate in that movement, because it is a movement based inherently on human goodness and not necessarily on human kindness alone. I genuinely believe that in the times that we live in, where national identity has infested almost every country in the world, where we are seeing even the world's most developed country feed on divisiveness, on racial slurs, on sexual transgressions, on gender discrimination, there's obviously something ridiculously wrong in the state of the world. But we can't do everything. If we could get rid of Trump, perhaps the world would have been kind enough to get rid of him or her. And I don't mean Trump in a political sense. I mean what people stand for. But what can we do? The power of human beings is not about massive change. It's about little blocks of change that then go on to create a movement, and a mass movement which inspires goodness and is inspired by goodness. That, to my mind, is the important thing. And I believe that people like you are those change agents. And you're not here because you have time. No one has the time in the world for anything. We have to make the time. The tragedy is we are very good at making time for ourselves. We are very poor at making time for others. So let me now get to the last stage before I take questions. I have a few mantras that I would like to share with you, for dissemination, whatever. Mantra 1. Any society's success is not measured by the wealth of the richest man. It is measured by the happiness of the poorest of the poor. We need to create a world which measures HQ, the happiness quotient, and not which measures the rich list. I've always said I would wait for the day when the world can remember the world's give list rather than the world's rich list. Because then we will move from envy to unbridled admiration. We will move from jealousy to celebration. We will move from giving to sharing. And that, thank you, that to my mind is very, very critical. Mantra 2. There is never a measure of how much and how little you can give back. Thanks. There is no measure. For people, and that's why I had this basic objection to the government's stupid rule of this 2% mandatory give back. And governments, as you know, aren't the most intelligent of organisms in our world today. I generally believe that give back must never have a mandate. Give back must never have a cap. We need to measure companies tomorrow not only on their market cap, but on their compassion cap. What is the compassion capitalization of your company? What is the social contract you've made? What is the impact that you're going to have on societies? Companies which create hospitals and education institutions around their steel plants are not worthy of admiration, because that they have to do. But how many of us go beyond business? How many of us go beyond the borders of the businesses that define us and that fuel our economy? That's the question. Mantra 3, goodness needs to be marketed because goodness needs to be celebrated. And only when goodness is celebrated will it be shared and will it be embraced. So share, market, celebrate that goodness. Because if you don't, people will not know. And when people don't know, you are limiting them from taking part in a movement that can only work one way, which is the positive way. The next mantra, sadly, we live in times that are very hurried. People are more concerned about selfies than self-esteem. People are more concerned about grabbing and grappling with the news rather than having an opinion or engaging with anything that is worthy of their time. The world has stopped chronicling contemporary history in the manner in which we used to see it. We don't spend as much time reading as we used to. We don't spend as much time debating. So we have moved from disagreeing to becoming disagreeable. In a world like this, goodness is like a calming lotion. It's a balm that soothes the mind and soothes the heart. Goodness doesn't have the measure of time. People who say, I have 1 hour to give to community are people who actually don't even care. You measure time when you're boiling an egg, not when you're doing charity. And I think that is a message that the Lions institution needs to spread to the world. You need to engender volunteerism. And sad but true, charity, community work, philanthropy must be made fashionable. It must be made appealing. It must be made enjoyable. It must be made celebratory. Often it is seen either as a chore or as a huge responsibility that has been thrust on slender shoulders. It's not a responsibility. It's not even a duty. It's our calling. That's why we're human beings. We have to tell people that goodness and philanthropy are not part of a duty mandate. They are part of our calling as human beings. That, to my mind, is the essential difference. Finally, the stuff that you do, and you do a lot, needs to be marketed in buckets. Countries, governments, other stakeholders need to know. The tragedy is that organizations like yours, perhaps including yours, I don't know, often work in silos. Silos are very good for cement companies, not for people who spread goodness. Today, increasingly, the world is a world of partners. It's a world of alliances. It's a world built on relationships. It's a world built on shared vision. It's a world built on shared beliefs. It's not a singular, linear, unidimensional world that we live in. Why can't Lions actually adopt what I call the local JV model? That is, pick 2 NGOs in every country which are doing the basest of basic fundamental grassroots work and partner with them. That will show 2 things to the world. Number 1, that the Lions movement is a movement for, of, by good people. It's not Lincolnian in democracy terms, but it's actually a movement for, of, by good people. You will then encourage more and more young people to embrace the world of giving back. Giving back, as I said, doesn't need to be imbibed or embraced or inspired in every human being. All revolutions start small. Human evolution per se is very minuscule in its unfolding. But if we don't make that beginning, we will lose out. If you don't make that beginning, the world will lose out. You are lions for a purpose. You walk with your head held high. You are compassionate, and you believe in the values of excellence and service. There can't be a better place. There can't be a better time. Remember, you're also in the city that gave the world hope through a diminutive nun whose entire purpose in life was to give the dying the death of dignity. You're actually in compassion land. You're in compassion city. No wonder, despite everything else, we still call this the city of joy. I urge you to perhaps re-examine, recalibrate, redesign, alter, whatever. But remember, you are not ambassadors of the Lions movement. You are the harbingers, the ambassadors of hope and of goodness. Thank you so much. My God, this man creeps up like a ghost. There must be a better way of jumping behind a speaker.
Sir, sorry. Sir, it was interesting. Before we switch over to question and answer session, let me, sir, tell you, we have also a pious organization at Lions LCIF. They are controlling all of finance. That's declared one of the best and organization in the world. So it's a transparent organization.
The other thing that the world must get rid of are introductions and vote of thanks. Why doesn't Lion begin with it? It is expeditious, it is unnecessary, and it really messes up the ecosystem. Besides, most people who are introducing you are either inaudible or completely disinterested. So what's the point? I might as well introduce myself and thank myself on your behalf and go home. But I'd be delighted to answer any questions. Yes. Okay, so let's go with the rules. Rules are wait for an instrument called a microphone, hold it close to your mouth, ask a question. If you have a statement, there's a podium right outside the airport. You can stand there and address the world.
No, it is a question. Yes, Mr. Said, you said it is not, once you don't understand your responsibility, then you have to made to understand. So government, if you have introduced CSR 2% for the corporates, I think nothing is wrong. Because
Good.
sometimes you have to make to contribute.
Absolutely.
If you are not giving it at your own, then suppose if you have...
No. So what's your question? You disagree with me, right?
Yeah.
Fine.
My question is...
No, I'm not looking for agreement. I'm not marrying your daughter. You have every right to disagree with me.
That's fine.
Why are you wasting so much of time to say I don't agree with you? Just say I don't agree with you. We end.
I don't have any marriageable daughters, so don't worry. I don't worry.
And you really thought I was serious?
No, I just want to make it clear.
The fruit never falls very far from the tree.
I just don't want to make it clear. So I believe that governments introducing CSR 2% for the corporates is nothing wrong.
Excellent. So we will amend rule number 1. If you disagree, just say I disagree with you. For the expanded statement, again, that same podium near the airport. I'm just having fun. This is the afternoon graveyard hour. You all are here under compulsion, so am I. So let's make the best of what we have. After this, you will hear my dear friend Sri Ravi Shankar, who will tell you about how nice the world is. And you will all go home feeling good until you actually switch on the lights and see who you're with. Or with not. Yes. No. Yeah, right. There's a question there. Yes, ma'am.
So I totally agree. There are a lot of protocol with the lions. So how do you make lions cool, like you said? So how do you brand ourselves to make the youngsters excited? Because there is a perception it's only for the oldies and then it's very boring for us. So how do you make it cool? How do you make it exciting for us?
I think that's an outstandingly good question. And I'll tell you why. Most organizations are defined by the tenure of their people. And obviously, older people have sagacity, experience, more tenured commitment, and we must respect that. So it's not about changing the old for the young or the new. I think what is happening is Lions is still operating in what I call legacy issues. If you ever talk about a blood drive, you will think Lions. If you talk about, cataract, you'll think Lions. I'm talking about the Indian context. If you talk about any of these large, I've always looked at Lions as three things. I had an uncle who lived in Amritsar. The only reason why I used to look at him was he'd have more pins on his body than Jesus had on the cross. He would always have a side business as an insurance salesman. And he would always be very busy every day of the week doing nothing. That's how I remember him. I'm not saying that it's true for all you guys. But if you look at some of you, y'all are wearing more pins than Queen Elizabeth has ever worn on her garter. We'll come to that later. The causes you take must be refreshingly new as well. So here are some solutions. I'm not a great believer in just identifying problems. And I'll give you the Tata example. What have we done with Digital India? We found, and that's true of every society, women are at the heart of change. If you teach one woman, you teach a family of 4. If you teach one man, you teach only that person. That's the way societies are structured. We have used ladies. No, I'm not trying to be gender, nice or anything. This is the truth. So you don't have to clap for me and all that. What I've noticed, and it has really worked well from a marketing point of view, is if you tell women and expose them to the powers of the net, expose them to the powers of distance learning, mobile telephony, you are opening a whole world of opportunities for them. What are the opportunities? You're holding opportunities up for them of entrepreneurship. They're getting greater educational exposure because of all the stuff that you can download. And they become a more aware, more compliant, but most importantly, a more exposed society. So why doesn't Lions actually take on a Lions for the Cubs program? And it's very simple. I'm just thinking of the cuff. Lions for Cubs is a program that is run by Lions International to introduce the marvels of digital technology amongst the young between the ages of 5 and 10. Make that your international program. Lions for Cubs, heralding a digital revolution. You've got to make young people get involved with this. And none of the old people should be running those programs. You should have young entrepreneurs, you should have people who are part of this startup India actually running it. But what do you have? You'll have a guy who's about, I don't want to get into age and all because that again becomes a debatable issue, but you know what I mean. So you've got to have younger people. Younger people have also got to be in the first row. The tragedy with every goddamn gala, every thing like this is, the older you are, they put you up in front. not realizing, should something happen to you, you'll take the longest to get out of the door. That's if you're alive by the time you reach. Think about it. The guy who can't walk, the guy who can barely see, will be placed right in front, hoping that he has to, like Noah, navigate to an ark of hope, which isn't even there. So have younger people in front. The organization must have young people on the board. And when I say young, I mean 28 and not 82. Because 82 can also be young. You remember what Churchill said, a man is only as young as the woman he's with. Next question. Yes. No, 1 minute, 1 minute.
You said,
I mean, you've got so many pins, you keep standing, but it'll be damn difficult for you to stand up again. Yeah.
you said that vote of thanks and introduction is not required, but it's our procedure. And suppose this audience doesn't know who is Suhel Seth, then how we can know that who is Suhel
Great
Seth?
question. Which is why you need younger people now in the Lions movement. There's something called Google, there's something called Wikipedia, and there's something called a minuscule brain. Use it, Google the guy, you don't need the introduction. And 1 minute, 1 minute. Let me answer your question of procedure. Have you heard of Bertrand Russell? No, he's not the same guy who Russell Street is named after. So Bertrand Russell famously said, with forms of government let fools contest. That which is governed best is best. So don't worry about procedure, worry about happiness. The problem is when you guys worry too much about procedure, you forget passion. Yes. I hope you're not coming up for a vote of thanks now. It's scary.
Good morning. Well, why you left this-
Again, I told you, it's a very simple rule. Instrument is called a microphone. This is the mouth. Hold it there. Yeah.
I'm holding it.
No, but you were holding it there. Let's go. Again,
Why you left this city of joy and settled somewhere else?
for personal and womanly reasons. If you had a choice between Mamta Banerjee and Katrina Kaif, where would you live? You've shown us your taste, but don't worry about mine. Where do you live, by the way, in Calcutta? Oh, because from your looks, you seemed also easily amenable for Chennai, but then Jayalalitha is dead. See, we're having fun, aren't we? This is happiness. This is celebration. It's not about procedure and vote of thanks and death by conversation.
Sir, people are scared of asking question, but I am making it possible to ask you a question. You are a public figure, and you are so blunt, calling spade a spade. Have you suffered in your public life?
No. And I think it's a great question. In A, I don't call a spade a spade. I go to the extreme. I call a spade a shovel. And there are two reasons why I haven't suffered. Number one, I have no political agenda. I'm not aligned to any of these political jokers. I hate all political parties and all politicians equally. But I always speak my mind based on what I believe is right. And I want to dwell on this for a minute because it has a learning which is far more significant than what I'm about to say. We are all entitled to make mistakes. Every human being. But there are two kinds of mistakes. a mistake which you make with intent and a mistake which was the wrong decision. The latter is fine. But if you make a mistake with malintent, that's what is worrying. The problem with us and the problem around the world, if you look at Britain, if you look at what's happening in Germany, what happened in the Basque region, in the Catalonian region in Spain, the problem is we've injected malice into everything, malintent into everything. We're no longer a society that is willing to see the unification of human entrepreneurship, human value, human goodness. I mean, think about it. If you go back into contemporary modern history of mankind, we've had 4 principal revolutions, as it were. And after the Industrial Revolution, as far as India is concerned, we were touched by the agricultural revolution and now by the digital revolution. The time for these revolutions to achieve what they have has crispened, has shortened. What it has done is it has induced something called hurry. We're all worried about the lack of time. And the young are the worst sufferers. I'm 54. To this day, I read 6 books a week. So people ask me, how come? A, eyesight. B, intent. C, you've got to make the time. So, again, I think it was Russell who said, if you have something to get done, give it to the busiest man. Because the man who does nothing never has the time.
Suhelji, do you agree that the philanthropy today is an insurance for our future?
Well, I haven't seen the future, and I hope I'm not part of it because I live in the present. You know, these are dangerous cliches too. I mean, what kind of insurance? Insurance almost has a negative ring to it or an unseemingly protective ring. The tragedy with our country is we are always thinking of the afterlife. So we bugger the present one up. And I've always said that don't think of the afterlife, because if you keep thinking of the afterlife, you will allow for yourself either too much transgression or too little in this lifetime. I believe goodness is not an insurance product. Goodness is a human trait, a human quality, an infallible one at that, and something that must be shared, spread, embraced, and enjoyed. So for God's sake, don't call it an insurance against the future or for the future. It's something that is inherent in us and should be celebrated by society.
Thank you, Suhel. I am Lain Varma, District Governor. My request over a vast experience. The organization started in 1917. You are completed 100 years. You are trying per 1.5 million lines.
One minute. Just speak a bit slowly.
Yeah.
Not softly, slowly. I can't hear a word of what you just said.
Okay.
I mean, this is like a bullet train, man.
Okay. This organization completed 100 years till today. This organization line started in the way 1917. You are completed centenary year 100 years. Till that you are trying for 1.5 million lines to serve more and more for this organization. You are unable to reach that figure. If you have any tips or vast experience, we can follow further.
I'll put you in touch with 2 gentlemen, Narendra Modi and Amit Shah. Ask them. They keep getting more and more members every day for the goddamn BJP. They might help you. I mean, you know, I appreciate that you have a lot of faith in me, but people collector is not one of my fine fortes.
Mr. Suhel, how do you react to the point that it's easy to preach, difficult to practice?
I agree. Ask Sri Sri Ravi Shankar when he comes up.
Okay.
Hello. Ask him. You should ask him. He's the spiritual guy. Did you ask Sadhguru? Ask them. My spirituality begins at 8 p.m. every evening and it's distilled in Scotland.
Suhel, we, sir, you have seen many prime ministers and many governments. What is your view about Narendra Modi?
Outstanding. Seriously, outstanding. I've known Modi since 1999 when he was my briefing client, when I used to handle Vajpayee's campaign. I was the first person to write for the Financial Times and the Financial Express in 2008. It's on the net. For the procedure, gentlemen, the net is something called the web, which you can Google. So, and in that article, after having dinner with Modi in Gandhinagar, I said, this man is going to be India's next Prime Minister. I also said one day I'll get married. One has happened, one hasn't. And looking at him, I doubt if this will be ever a possibility. As I said, the fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree.
Sir, you talked about your association with Tatas. Do you really see any involvement of Lions with Tata so that this goodness which we have been talking about can be increased further? Is there a possibility?
I think it's a great thing. I don't know how, it's structured here, but if there is a way and if one can make it happen, we will make it happen. I think it's a great idea. I've already outlined, again, this information is transparent, it's on the net. You have to go to tatatrust.org and see the work and then see where partnerships can exist.
Hello. Hey, Suhel. Yes. This side.
No, it would help if you said which side. India for you.
Left.
So this side, which side? Right of the hall, left of the hall, middle of the hall, on the chandelier.
Absolutely correct. Right, left side. The corner. In fact, we are part of your fan club. We have been following you since your debating days when you, AP, and Ashok Vishwanathan were there. And we really value you a lot. In fact, we have learnt a lot from your style of speaking. And you have been a great motivator also. And now, after seeing you on these debatings, then to TVs and movies, and now you are also advising the who's and who of the country, it really is a big, proud thing for us, being from a Calcutta boy. I would request you, what's your message to the youngsters? By youngsters, I mean people from crossing their schools and going to colleges and going searching for their new career paths. What should they do outside the school, what school doesn't teaches them?
I'm going to say something which I've always believed in, which may not fly with popular sentiment. I think the world should stop sending out messages to people. The only messaging that must happen are between parents and children, and between children and their teachers. When we were growing up, we didn't have people who sent out messages or motivational speakers or spiritual gurus or, people who you had to fall at their feet for greater knowledge or greater learning. My best teachers have always been and will remain my two parents. I don't need a message from Lions International or Donald Trump or Obama or Modi. No. The problem is parenting has been outsourced in the world. Okay, last question to the lady.
Hello, sir. It's been a pleasure listening to you. I have a question. You were speaking about the 3 agendas of health, education, and digitization. So have you already made a model on that, on how to go about it? And if it is, why don't you share it with the Lions here? So we also can, why don't you share it with the Lions here? So we all can work together on the models.
No, so here's what's happened. What I've shared with you is what the Tata Trusts are doing. Okay? In those 4 verticals, not 3, 4. The one you missed out is sanitation. That gentleman made an interesting point when he said, is there scope for combining forces? Is there scope for partnership, for alignment? I've always believed that goodness has no limitation on the number of people involved in it. So the more, the merrier. You need to work out how you will ultimately deliver that stakeholder impact and what will be the long-term measurement, both in terms of success and in terms of achievement. If that is figured, you're home and dry. Yes.
Just to supplement you, sir, when JRD was on, we had a combined program of value-based education for children. We called that title as a Quest program. After JRD went away, we have not been able to convince the newcomers who are coming into the charge of Tata. I'm talking of Naval Tata. We had a meeting with him, we explained to him, but he didn't put his mind into it. So we would like you, because that program is a value-based education.
Sure.
Abdul Kalam said, if I'm allowed to teach the students, I'll be too happy to associate with Lions Club.
Sure, not a problem. And you know, I have to tell you, not because anything else, I don't think in the 20 years that I've worked with Mr. Tata, what's happened? I said in the 20 years that I've worked with Mr. Tata, I've never seen him reject an idea which spreads hope, goodness, and brings about real change for real people. So I don't think that's an issue, but obviously it needs to be worked out and worked out better. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suhel, for such a delightfully rocking afternoon. And to felicitate Suhel Seth, I would like to invite on stage International President Dr. Naresh Agarwal and the host committee.
Well, my Lions know about it. This is the winner of the grand prize for the painting. 600,000 children participated. This is what I wanted to tell you, Suhelji. No, I'm not here. I'm not here for photo thanks. You can give a joke.
No, I'm joking. Are we done?
Yes, we are done.